Hello and welcome back to our study of Peninei Halacha, the teachings of Rabbi Eliezer Melamed Shlita. Here we are, Erev Shabbos Kodesh, Parashas B'Shalach, Shabbos Shira. Still extremely cold here where we are. I hope it's warmer where you ever may be listening. I know we have a lot of listeners in Israel and this time of year in Florida, two holy cities, one might argue, speaking tongue-in-cheek, of course, but please continue learning with us and continue davening for Chai Leitz Valgan Yisrael for Shalom Chol B'Tzvei Yisrael. We learn each day Lili Nishmat Seren Daniel Shimon Ben Harav Doron V'Shel Yishem Kam Damo. In the next chapter, Makam Amidas HaMizbarachim. B'Shel Shah Kohanim Mevarachim Tzrichem HaMizbarachim L'Himatzei Mulam. So when the Kohanim are duchening and giving the blessing, so those who are being blessed have to be opposite them. Shenemar Kos Varachos B'nai Yisrael Amor Lahem. As the pasuk in Naso says, as we've recited, Chazal interpret this to mean, the bracha of the Kohanim, because it says Amor Lehem, say to them or speak with them or to them, that the blessing has to be the way that people speak to their friends. She'omdim panim keneged panim, that they stand face to face. Umedabrim b'kol ram, and they speak out loud. Shekolam is barachim yuchol shamam, so that those who are being blessed will be able to hear them. And even though the Kohanim who are blessing are required to stand, the truth is that Me'ikar Hadin, from the base point of the Halacha, those who are being blessed are allowed to sit. However, as a sign of honor, that's my addition, but the general accepted custom is that people stand for duchening. Aval adam chola chalash, someone who is ill or someone who is weak, it's difficult to stand. Yachol sheves beis habracha, is allowed to sit during the blessing of the Kohanim. Misha omed achar haKohanim eino nichla b'bracha. Someone who is standing behind the Kohanim is not included in the blessing. Aval misha omed mamash betzideim. But if you're really side by side or aligning on the side of them, yifnes panav leKohanim ba'arigu nichla b'bracha. You should turn his face towards the Kohanim, and you'll be included in the blessing. So let's say some shuls where some of the pews or the seating wrap around the side of the bima area, so somebody who's sitting really on the side there, in the first rows of the shul, they have to move so that then they'll be sitting and facing opposite the Kohanim. If they're in front of them, so if they're in front of the Kohanim, meaning when the Kohanim turn around and you'll be facing them, or literally side by side, then you can just merely face them. However, if your seat is going to be found behind the Kohanim, that when they get up to the duchen on the bima, and you're going to be actually behind them, standing behind them, then you have to move to a different spot that you'll be facing them. So I'll just give you the most practical example of it, is that where I sit in shul, since I'm the rabbi of the shul and I sit on the bima, so when it comes time for Kohanim, I step off the bima, obviously because the Kohanim have to go there, but also if I would stay in my place, I would literally be standing behind the Kohanim, and I would not be included in the bracha, so I move towards the front of the shul, facing the Kohanim while they duchen. Anyone who's standing in the shul, facing the Kohanim, anywhere in the shul, as long as you're facing them, you're included in the blessing. Even if there's someone that's very tall that's in front of you and you can't see the Kohanim, they're blocking you. Or let's say you're standing behind a pillar or a wall or something that is between you and the Kohanim. Since you're in the airspace, in the area that is opposite facing the Kohanim, this is included in the blessing and you will be yotzei. However, someone who turns away from the Kohanim is not going to be included. So this is a American rabbinic pet peeve. I'm not sure how this started, but I've given this talk so many times over the last 30 years. But for some reason, and I find it more happening in the women's section, and I know where it comes from, is that people say you're not supposed to look at the Kohanim, at the hands, as we discussed previously, because of distraction. But people have taken that to mean that we have to look away from them when they turn around. So people that physically turn around in shul during duchening, and again, it happens here in America more commonly because we duchen less frequently. So since we do it so rarely and people don't know, so it's really a function of not knowing. So I try to educate people. But you have, especially in the women's section, that women actually turn their backs to the Kohanim, which is the worst thing that you can do, because you're supposed to face the Kohanim to accept the bracha. By turning your back to them, I know people don't do this intentionally, with that meaning that they want to not accept the bracha, but that's actually what you're doing, is you're saying, I don't want your bracha. So please, if you know anybody doing this, tell them they should turn around and face the Kohanim. Someone who couldn't make it to shul for whatever reason, against his will and something out of his control, you're still included in the bracha. Let's say someone had to go out to work, had to leave davening, or women and children don't have to come, because the bracha really affects all of Klal Yisrael as long as you're in that area. The only ones who are not included in the blessing are those that could have gone and don't, or those that walk out, or those that don't want to be in the airspace, as we've been, for lack of a better word, to do so. In note 2 here, interesting also, says what you should do if you're in the middle of Shmona Esrei, and let's say you're standing behind, let's say you're in one of the front rows, and you're in the middle of Shmona Esrei, whether or not you should stop in the middle of your Shmona Esrei. The answer is no, and you consider it an onus, or certain cases where the chazan is located. So we try to position the chazan. The chazan is always going to be in front of the kohanim, but that's not always the case. So these types of cases are found in the notes. Again, much more practical in Israel since they duchen every single day. For us, because we duchen so rarely, we position ourselves accordingly, and we have to know exactly what to do. So wishing everyone a peaceful, restful, and warm Shabbos ahead. Shabbos Shira. Please continue davening for Chayei Tzvah for Shlem L'Chol P'tuei Yisrael. Nishmat Daniel Shimon Ben Harab Darom V'Shel Yishem Kam Demo. Thank you so much for joining us this week. We'll see you here next week. Have a great Shabbos and a great day.